One of the unique features of Hebrew poetry is the use of parallelism. This lecture will be perhaps the most important in all of the lectures on the Psalms because you have to understand how Hebrew poetry works, and that is the issue of parallelism. So let's talk a little bit about what it is, and then we'll watch how it works in different ways. Parallelism is two lines of poetry that state the same thing twice. So it's statement followed by restatement, and the two lines together express one idea. And putting them together fills out the idea in a poetic way. So parallelism translates better, right? Whenever you translate English poetry, then you have to figure out how to work with rhyming. And do you translate into other words that rhyme? And that can be awfully hard to find a word that rhymes that means approximately what the English word meant. Not so with parallelism. Parallelism, you can appreciate the work, the poetry, the way in which it's written, and you don't have to worry about when you translate, do we have a word that rhymes? So parallelism translates better than some of other poetic qualities that we could talk about, like rhyming. There are 4 or perhaps some more different kinds of parallelism, but we're going to focus on these 4. There is synonymous parallelism, there is antithetic parallelism, there is climactic parallelism, and then there is emblematic parallelism. So let's talk about those 4. But all of them, again, once you understand what parallelism is trying to do, then they're more easily understood. So don't let the big words put you off. This will be a great help. So synonymous parallelism is the second line repeats the first line, but using different words. So, for example, in Psalm 103:10, the psalm says, "He does not deal with us according to our sins, nor repay us according to our iniquities." So they both sort of say the same thing. So one way to test whether you understand the parallelism correctly is to take the verse and rephrase it in one idea. So you can see that the elements of each line are repeated. Does not deal sounds a lot like repay. Deal with us or repay us, the direct object is the same. And according to our sins, according to our iniquities, is filling out how he could repay us. And then the nor just provides a nice transition, but the he is implied in the second line as well. So you see how the first line and the second line essentially says the same thing, but much better when they're together, because you get a fuller sense, and you get to celebrate that one idea that God does not deal with us according to our sins or according to our iniquities. So you see how that synonymous parallelism works? 2 lines saying essentially the same thing and including some of the same elements. Antithetic parallelism then, they are 2 lines, again essentially saying the same thing, but the second line is negative. So the first line might say something positive, the second line says the negative, the mirror image of that. So they're both again saying the same thing, but they are doing it one from the affirmative and the other from the negative. So the first line stands in contrast. The second line stands in contrast to the first, but affirms the truth in the first line. Psalm 1:6 says this, "For the Lord knows the way of the righteous." And then I've repositioned so you can see where the elements are, "but the way of the wicked will perish." All right? So here are the 2 lines. The way is known by God either way. The way of the righteous is known. And then you see that it seems like the way, what the Lord knows and perish, part of it is you need to understand the understanding of God knowing the way indicates more than just the fact that he intellectually he is not unaware of what the righteous or the wicked are doing, but knows means he's actively knowing and caring for, in a relationship, the way of the righteous. That helps you to see the contrast between that and the perishing of the wicked. All right, so there you again see it's parallelism, but the second line will begin with like the word but, or introduce a contrast to the first one. You don't understand the parable, the proverb, of course, until you can say both ideas in one main idea. So make sure that when you're describing those things, your interpretation has the same idea in both lines. Then there's a kind of parallelism called climactic parallelism, where the second line doesn't repeat necessarily, but it finishes the idea or develops it farther. So this you could see in Psalm 145:18. The Lord is near to all who call on him. And then there's another idea that the psalmist wants to add. The ones who honestly call upon God, the ones who are zealous and true in the way that they want to approach God, they're calling on him in truth, and so then God is near. Do you see it? So the second line is not repeating as much as completing. So it does have elements that are repeated, the to all and the who call on him, but it's the in truth that is added to that second line that really helps you to understand why God is near to those who call on some and not to others. It's whether you call in truth. You see how that works? So that's climactic. So synonymous, the same thing said twice. Antithetic, the one line is positive, the other is negative, but they're saying the same idea. Climactic is one idea repeated but extended in some way. And then there is emblematic. Emblematic is when you have a figure of speech in the first line that the rest of the proverb has to explain it. And you can see that in Psalm 103, verses 11 to 13. Watch how the first one has that, the merism as high as the heavens are above the earth. So great is his steadfast love toward those who fear him. So you see the distance. Or as far as the east is from the west. Or as a father shows compassion to his children. See the pictures. And then the second line explain what the psalmist indicates. So he's not talking about the distance in the heavens and the earth. He's wanting to show just how great the steadfast love God has for those who fear him, or how far he has removed our sins from us, or whether or not he has compassion on his children. Now, do you see? That's emblematic. So those are just some of the ways in which parallelism helps us to understand biblical poetry. Here's a test case. You know you're starting to understand how parallelism works when you look at something like Proverbs 10:1. Here's what Proverbs 10:1 says. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. So remember I said those two lines have to come together into one idea. So we have the wise son and the foolish son. We have parents being made glad or sorrowful based on the choices of the son. Now, if I said this proverb teaches that when a son does good things, the father is the one who gets all the accolades, and when a son does bad things, it's the mother who is grieved. I wouldn't say that because remember we're trying to say one idea. So the first line says father, the second line says mother. So better to interpret Proverbs 10:1, not as reflecting on the different parents, but to say the whole action of the son, whether he is wise or whether he is a fool, will impact the emotional well-being of father and mother because they care about their son. And when he makes good decisions, their heart will be joyous, the heart will be content. When he makes bad decisions, then it's a sorrow to them, both father and mother. So do you see, one idea helps us to avoid making what might at first blush be the meaning of the text. But when we put the two lines together to try to say one main idea, we include father and mother together. So that's how parallelism works. In Perhaps the next video, we will look at chiasm, which is parallelism as a structure for a psalm, a structure for a song that is writ large. So they take parallelism to the next level. Chiasm is parallelism 2.0, and we'll check that out in a minute.